Hi, I'm Don Bodan from SampleLibraryReview.com. I'm very excited. I got a chance to sit down and interview Danny Cocke, fresh from creating sound design presets for Audio Imperia's Klavier Gravitas Piano and the mastermind behind trailer guitars, tensions, and motors. Danny's numerous credits include scores for trailers, video games, and films. In this video, we hear Danny talk about sample libraries, developing them, and using them. To check out the much longer video, where I interviewed Danny about his career and where he's gotten his big breaks, check the description for a link below to the full interview video. So the first thing I was going to ask you about library-wise was with the Trailer Guitars library. What was the inception for that?
So Jan and I became friends a couple years ago. We were talking about sound iron stuff, and I was doing some demos and then possibly making a library, and then we staying friends over time and talking about it. And then I revisited something I actually did for Paul Hasslinger for Underworld. I did a lot of like guitar pulses and just interesting bowing sounds and weird stuff for Underworld, The Awakening. So I went back to the sessions and I kind of took my guitar back out again and recreated a lot of, took it a step further and made it a little bit more trailerized and like heavier tones and, gridded stuff up a little bit more. But yeah, I went back to those sessions and with a new approach, and then that became, the guitar library. But that was one thing we did on the guitar library. There was a lot of single patches, and as a composer, I hate going through like having to scroll through patches. I kind of want it all like auditioned on one thing with key switches or something. Just to make the auditioning as quick as possible, and even the chance of randomly hitting three things together that have a cool sound versus just always one patch and then dicking with contact a lot.
Is that the first library that you created? Or have
It's the first for composers, yeah. Like, I've done a bunch of sound design stuff for the trailer world with this thing called Danger Impact, and I make all my own instruments out of stuff, that I create. Even if I take a third-party library and make a pad, and I like just that sound that I put like 10, plugins on, I'll make just an audio file and then make my own instruments. So I have kind of my favorite selections, accessible, that are already modded and weirded out in the right way. So, but yeah, this is my first for, other musicians, which is cool.
Yeah.
You've been building and sculpting your own instruments for your own use and for other composers for a while, but are there any tools or libraries or plugins that you kind of like gravitate that's like in your back pocket for your workflow?
Yeah, I'm just like you. I'm obsessed with all the libraries. Like, I feel like each one, I'm like, I have to have that. Because sometimes one thing, it'll just spark an idea. Like because you get worn out on the same little snapshots, and they start to form, I don't want any one library to form a sound for me too much. So I bounce around, I grab an inspiration. If I buy a pack and it's got only one good sound that starts a piece for me, an inspiration, then that's a win. So and I'm always experimenting with orchestral libraries, so I try to buy pretty much everything that comes out, and it's kind of an issue that I'm also now trying to slow down because it's so much stuff, and there's stuff that I bought that I haven't even gone through, and that's where I'm like, okay, dude, I need to slow down.
I always make sure to state when I'm doing reviews or talking about libraries about the inspiration factor, because like you said, sometimes the one patch, is inspirational enough that it's worth the whole library, even if I don't use the rest of it and I create one track out of it. And
definitely, yeah. I mean, that's because that's working just alone in the studio. There's a different energy, and sometimes you need a little bit of like external energies to like inspiration from a really cool pad that you're in a space. And then that's kind of, you're like, yes, that's the exact space I wanted to be in right now. Blend a ton of stuff. I never try to use one library where it's really blatant, and there's nothing wrong with that when you're working fast and you have deadlines or like TV or video games where you're just like, have to write a lot quick. But if you have the time and the luxury, it's cool to make your own stuff.
Like you, I'm using so many sample libraries. But what I find is that I get to virtually work with Danny Cocke because I have his guitar library for a track, and I get to virtually work with Imogen Heap or The Unfinished or...
That's true, yeah. And it's like the cross-pollination factor that I really like. It's like, yeah, buying the Imogen Heap library, I couldn't wait until that came out. I haven't really used it a ton, but I love to know. I used like her vocal pad in a track. I'm like, that's awesome.
I then asked Danny a little bit about working on sound design presets for the Klavier Gravitas Piano.
I think he kept me in the loop on his ideas on it, and I was like, oh, that's awesome. But I think when it really tipped into having the effect wheel to turn into that ambient, I thought that was brilliant. If you're in the middle of writing, you don't want to be sitting and messing with plugins. You want just something to keep your flow going and turning that wheel. And I still haven't gone through all the presets, so I keep little surprises for myself.
Check the link in the description below. I'll post on Sample Library Review some of Danny Cocke's latest music releases, as well as the full interview where we talk more about composing and some of his first breaks into the industry.